everyone, and welcome to the Celebrating International Face Equality Week podcast series with Faces. Today, I am so excited to speak to Alison Midstokke. Alison is a New York-based actress, model, and businesswoman with Treacher Collins Syndrome. In addition to acting, Alison is also an advocate for face equality and a champion of kindness and pursuing your passions. This conversation is full of encouragement, confidence, and more, and I can't wait for you guys to listen. Enjoy! Well, Allison, thank you for joining me. We are celebrating International Face Equality Week, and this year the theme is Seen and Served, being in public spaces with a facial difference. So I thought I could ask you first if you could give us a little bit of insight as what it's like for someone that doesn't have a facial difference. What's it like to confidently take up space in public places?
Yes, so with someone with a facial difference?
Yeah.
Yes, so I'm gonna be transparent. It's not easy. I think I make it look easy for a lot of people, but I gotta be honest, it's not.
Yeah.
Um, I living in one of the most toughest cities in the world is not the most friendliest space for people with facial differences. I think now they're more open than compared to 15 years ago. Um, I experience with a lot of stares and judgment, and I do tell people that, if you could be standing next to a registered sex offender and not know it, but you can
Yeah.
stare at me and
Hmm.
judge me and have all
Yeah.
questions going in your head. So
Hmm.
sometimes, it bothers me when people come to me directly and say, "Oh, we all go through it. We all struggle." No, we don't all go through it,
Yeah.
because if you're sitting in a subway with 50 other people with their own individual problems, but one person has to stare at you, looking
Hmm.
at you, what's wrong with you? So to
Yeah.
me, that hurts
Hmm.
inside, but I've learned to deal with it because I've learned to know who I am. And that's
Hmm.
different. That's another answer
Hmm.
for one of your questions, though.
Oh, I love that. And that's so true. The experience of living with a facial difference is so unique than
Mhm.
other experiences. And so it's very
It is.
important to acknowledge that.
It is.
Yeah.
And everyone deals with it differently. So I can't compare my experiences with your experiences. And, you know, we have different backgrounds and different
Mhm.
experiences. And, for me, I'm very extremely ambitious
Mhm.
and where I can be hard on myself quite
Mhm.
often. But it
Yeah.
really depends on the person.
Absolutely. Yeah. You just mentioned a little bit about living in New York City and being on the subway. Can you tell us a little bit about any experiences, positive or negative, it's up to you, specifically in the hospitality industry, restaurant scene? Have you had any sort of experiences that have stuck with you?
Yes, so I've had a lot of negative experiences when I moved to the city like San Francisco and New York
Mhm.
City. And I've dealt with situations I've never experienced as a child because I grew up in a small town in North Idaho called Sandpoint. I didn't run into those situations, but I can share an example. One time I experienced bullying on the
Mhm.
subway. And there were a group of mean, nasty kids saying nasty things to me about my appearance, mostly because they didn't like the fact that I was comfortable in my own skin and I carried myself well. So they said some hurtful things, and then I was shattered and heartbroken. So I sat down on the bench and I looked at the woman who was a beautiful African American lady, and she looked at me with compassion in her eyes, and she said these words that changed my life forever. She said, "It's important to know who you are."
Mm.
And from that day on, I carry those words with me. It doesn't matter what people think or what people say to you. It matters who you know you are. So at the end of the day, I remind myself, even if I have a hard day, I remind myself, I know who I am. I know
Yeah.
my purpose. And I just keep moving forward.
Oh, amazing. I
Mm.
love that. I needed to hear that today too, so thank
Yeah.
you.
Yes, I think everyone does. Mhm.
Absolutely. Yes. And sort of switching gears a little bit, I wanted to ask, and sometimes it's hard when people in the community are asked, how should other people behave? Because sometimes, it's not always our job to educate the public. And we don't always have to be the educators of how to interact with people. But I do want to ask you, do you have any advice for hospitality workers, people in businesses that when they have someone with a facial difference or really any visible difference, do you have any
Mhm.
sort of advice for how they should serve them?
Yes, I think you shouldn't judge someone based on
Mhm.
their looks or judging a book by its cover. But again, my advice would be, try to judge someone how they carry themselves, how
Mhm.
they speak, how their work history, the accomplishments, instead of judging based on their disability. Because for me, for a long, long time, I did not want to be defined by a label. I wanted to be seen for my talent and the work I've done. So I've never really taken that route as an artist. I'm
Mhm.
always trying to take a different route where people can see me for my work and talent. So I like to tell people just if someone is struggling to define that person or connect with the person is
Mhm.
different, try to look at their assets or their skills or how they carry themselves and try to connect with them by having a basic conversation, such as "How are you today?" "How are you today?" or "What are your hobbies?" or "What kind of music or movies do you like to listen and watch?" So things like that.
Yeah, I love it. It's very simple when it comes down
Yeah.
to it, that
Yeah.
kindness and that respect.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. And the theme this year is seen and served. And so I was wondering, what does being seen and served mean to you?
Gosh, being seen and served to me it means being understood. And
Mhm.
once we're understood, we're respected. And then
Mhm.
being served to me you know, is someone, once we are understood, respected, we're also given fair opportunities. That's my opinion of being served instead of being discriminated or being overlooked. I've been doing my work as an artist for decades. People think, oh, she had it easy. No, I'm still trying to pave the way. But yeah, that's is my answer for that.
Yeah, amazing. I'm gonna go off script a little bit. We have a lot of our clients are young people, young children really. And I
Mhm.
was wondering, do you have any advice for them or maybe your younger self? Anything that you would like them to know?
Yes, I would have to say, you know, follow your dreams, follow your
Mhm.
heart. Your heart. There's a book that they should read. It's called The Alchemist. And the whole point is following your heart because I believe that when you come to this earth, God planted our passions in our
Mhm.
hearts. And it's important to follow those and to make a difference by helping the communities and people and try to work on yourselves the best way you can because that will go far. If you don't think you need to work on your talents or yourself, people are not gonna respect you in that way, if that makes sense. Like just work, go for your dreams and work on your goals. It will go somewhere.
Amazing advice, Allison. Thank you so much. Anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up today?
Um, I would have to say again, I know it's not easy to get judged, overlooked, discriminated, or stared at. I
Mhm.
think how I overcame those obstacles and to continue to do so is
Mhm.
to take care of yourself. Do the
Mhm.
things that you love, like taking a walk in a park or enjoying your time with friends and family. Or, for me is I have my own apartment that I worked really hard to get on my own, but I love to decorate it. I'm surrounded by plants and I
I
have a
love it.
cat, little things of nourishment goes a long way.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, great advice, Allison. Allison, I can't thank you enough for joining me and chatting with me today. I really, really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you for having me.